And we are on. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time zone you're in. Welcome back to Sip&Talk.
Welcome back, everyone. Great to have you with us.
So let me just start with a question for all you Sip&Talkers out there.
Go for it.
Have you ever flown on China Airlines? And when you saw the name, did you have to, pause for just a second and think, wait, is this the Beijing China? Or is it the Taiwan China?
I bet a lot of people have. That momentary confusion.
Exactly, that little flicker of uncertainty.
Well, I'm going to spoil the answer right away because that's what we do here.
Yeah.
That specific airline, China Airlines, is a Taiwanese company. It's based in Taipei.
And that small, almost trivial moment of confusion you might feel at the airport, it's actually a perfect little window into one of the biggest, most complicated political puzzles on the entire planet.
It really is. It's this whole tangle of history, of names, of competing claims. Yeah. Messy.
Very messy.
So, okay, before we dive into the whole long historical movie, let's just give everyone the 1-minute conclusion right at the top. The TLDR, if you will.
Let's do it.
The whole huge argument over only one China isn't really about whether two separate places exist. I mean, they obviously do. Different governments, different currencies, different armies.
Right. That's a fact on the ground.
The real fight is about something else. It's about which government is the legitimate owner of that ancient, powerful brand name, who gets to hold the sign that says China.
That's the core of it. Who holds the title deed to the civilization?
Exactly. Now, if you're a longtime listener, you might remember we went deep on this in our two-parter, EP83.
We did. We really unpacked the history there.
But today, our mission is a little different. We're doing the quick recap update.
The lazy person's guide.
Exactly. We know this topic is incredibly complex, so we want to use an analogy to make it stick. We're going to tell the story of a giant family company splitting into two competing branches.
AHQ versus branch store showdown.
Yeah.
It's the best way to grasp where this whole tangled relationship comes from.
So the basic setup of our story is this. You have the big family company, China. Then a new boss, that's the PRC, comes in, takes over the main headquarters, snatches the big corporate sign.
And kicks the old boss as the RSC out.
Right. And the old boss escapes and sets up a new, incredibly successful, high-tech branch store on an island called Taiwan.
But here's the really fascinating twist in the story, the part that's so important for today. Mm-hmm. The employees at that branch store, the actual people living in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Many of them, a huge majority now, are actively rejecting the original China sign. They don't want to use the name the old boss fought so hard to keep. And the question is, why?
And the reason for that is pretty simple, but it has massive geopolitical consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Internationally, that big China brand name has been, completely taken over by the headquarters, by the PRC in Beijing. When you see China in the news or at the UN, it means the government in Beijing.
And that government is a single-party authoritarian state.
Exactly. But the branch store, Taiwan, it operates totally differently. It's a full-on multi-party democracy.
They have free elections, free speech. They've built this vibrant, distinct culture.
So for most people in Taiwan today, if you call them Chinese, it feels like you're lumping them in with the HQ. It feels like you're denying the unique, free, and democratic branch culture they've spent the last 30-plus years building.
It's an issue of identity, not just politics.
Totally. So we are going to roll out the historical movie of this one family becomes two rivals battle. We'll start way back in the late 19th century and bring it all the way up to today, including some really important recent moves by the U.S., like the 2025 Taiwan Assurance Implementation Act.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay, to really get this, we have to go back, way back. Over 100 years ago. Let's set the stage. What was Taiwan's deal in the 19th century?
In the 19th century, Taiwan was basically governed by China's last empire, the Qing dynasty.
And in our analogy, if China is this huge family estate, Taiwan was kind of like the vegetable garden out back.
That's a great way to put it. It was attached, it was part of the property, but it wasn't really central to the day-to-day life of the main house. It was a bit marginal, a frontier province.
Then comes the first big earthquake, 1895.
A massive one. Japan, which had modernized incredibly quickly, goes to war with the Qing dynasty in the First Sino-Japanese War.
And Japan wins, decisively.
Completely. And as part of the treaty, the defeated Qing government is forced to cede Taiwan to Japan. Basically, they had to sell the vegetable garden.
And this is not a small detail in the story. This is a fundamental plot point. Taiwan becomes a Japanese colony for 50 years.
50 years. Think about that. That's 2 full generations of people.
While the mainland is going through the collapse of the empire, warlords, civil war, all this chaos.
Taiwan is on a totally different track. It's being administered by a very strict, very efficient, modernizing colonial power. People are learning Japanese in schools. The infrastructure is being built up by the Japanese. The legal system changes.
It creates this deep subconscious sense of being a separate branch of the family, with different habits, a different language of business.
That's a divergence that really forms a core part of the modern Taiwanese identity. And it's something that Beijing's historical narrative often just brushes over.
It's a huge piece of the puzzle. Okay, so fast forward. The garden is under new management for half a century. Then we get to the end of World War II.
Right. 1945. Japan is defeated, and the Allied powers, including the United States, decide that Taiwan, which Japan had taken, should be returned to China.
So it's handed over to the internationally recognized government of China at that time.
Which was the Republic of China, or the ROC, led by the Kuomintang Party, the KMT.
So checking our analogy, the vegetable garden is finally returned to the family estate. Hooray!
But, there's a huge but. The family itself is in the middle of a brutal civil war.
The homecoming wasn't a party, it was just more chaos. The KMT officials and soldiers who showed up in Taiwan in 1945, they didn't act like liberators?
No, they often acted like a new occupying force. They were seen as corrupt, and many of them treated the island as just a source of resources to fuel their losing war effort back on the mainland.
So the local Taiwanese people who'd lived under Japanese rule and were maybe hoping for, some real freedom.
They were deeply disappointed. And that resentment just boiled over.
The 228 incident.
In February 1947, yes. A massive island-wide protest against KMT rule was brutally crushed. Thousands were killed. It was a horrific event that created this deep generational trauma and distrust between the KMT government and the local Taiwanese population.
It's a wound that honestly is still healing today. It really set the stage for the identity shift we're going to talk about later.
Absolutely. And then just 2 years later comes the main event, 1949.
The key split. The Chinese Civil War on the mainland reaches its conclusion.
The Communist Party, the CCP, led by Mao Zedong, defeats the KMT, led by Chiang Kai-shek.
So the CCP establishes the People's Republic of China, the PRC, on the mainland. This is our new boss taking over the entire corporate headquarters.
And the KMT, the old government, the ROC, they retreat in defeat to the island of Taiwan. They bring about 2 million people with them. Soldiers, civil servants, intellectuals, their whole apparatus.
And this is the most critical political point of the whole story. They didn't go to Taiwan to retire.
Not at all. Their position, which they held fiercely for decades, was, we are still the one true legitimate government of all of China. We are just temporarily relocating to a provincial office, and we will one day retake the mainland.
So from 1949 onward, you have this completely wild situation.
Totally unsustainable diplomatically.
You have 2 governments. The PRC in Beijing, controlling the mainland, and 1 billion people claiming to be the government of all of China, including Taiwan.
And you have the ROC in Taipei, controlling Taiwan and a few small islands, also claiming to be the legitimate government of all of China, including the mainland.
And for 75 years, neither side has ever recognized the other's legitimacy. It's a fundamental, unresolved civil war frozen in time.
The battle for the brand name was officially on.
Okay, so that sets the historical stage. The family company has split. Now let's get into the arguments. The battle for that brand name. Let's start with Beijing's side. Why are they so insistent, so rigid on this idea that there is absolutely only one China?
For Beijing, this isn't just a policy point. It's foundational to their entire political existence. They see the founding of the PRC in 1949 as the moment they inherited the complete, unbroken, indivisible sovereignty of Chinese civilization.
So to them, any challenge to that idea is a challenge to their very right to rule.
Exactly. And they've boiled this down into what they call the One China principle. It's their set of non-negotiable house rules for the rest of the world.
It's the price of admission to have diplomatic relations with them, right?
It is. Any country that wants to have an embassy in Beijing has to agree to their 3 core points.
Okay, let's break them down. What's point number 1?
Point 1 is simple. There is only one China in the world.
Straightforward enough. What's number 2?
Taiwan is an inseparable part of China. Again, this is their core territorial claim.
Okay, and the 3rd one. This is the real killer for Taipei.
This is the one. The People's Republic of China is the sole legitimate government of China. That last part is the political dagger. It's designed to make the government in Taiwan, the ROC, legally and diplomatically extinct. a non-entity.
A ghost. So it's a coercive tool. It forces every country in the world to pick a side. You can't recognize both.
You cannot. And because of the PRC's economic and military power, almost the entire world has chosen to recognize Beijing. This principle is their red line.
They believe they hold the, what's the term? The legitimate line of succession.
The Fatong. It's this concept of possessing the unbroken mandate, the historical authority. They're essentially saying, we hold the original deed to the house, and the other guy is just a squatter with a photocopy. It's completely non-negotiable for them.
But for decades, there was a powerful counterargument, right? The idea that Taiwan is the real China. This was the ROC's main weapon.
It was their diplomatic and intellectual counterpunch, and it was based on a few key pillars. First was a legal claim of being the legitimate heir.
Explain that.
The Republic of China was founded in 1911. It overthrew the last emperor. It was, believe it or not, Asia's first republic. It was founded on modern constitutional ideas.
So their argument was, we are the original revolutionary China. The PRC from 1949, they're the communist usurpers who staged a staff rebellion and took over the Home Office.
Precisely. The old boss, the ROC, might have been driven out, but he still holds the original articles of incorporation, and he's running a very successful branch store.
And the rebellious staff back at HQ is just telling everyone he's dead or bankrupt, even though he's clearly still in business.
That was a very powerful argument for legitimacy for a long time, especially in the West during the Cold War.
And it was backed up by a cultural argument, too, the original recipe claim.
This one really resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah.
The KMT retreated to Taiwan before the Cultural Revolution on the mainland, which was this huge, chaotic period from 1966 to 76 that saw the destruction of countless temples, artifacts, and traditions.
So Taiwan, by default, became a kind of time capsule.
In a way, yes. They preserved a lot of what people see as the traditional Chinese flavor. Confucian temples were maintained, traditional festivals were celebrated without interruption, and maybe most visibly, they kept using the complex, traditional Chinese characters.
The original old recipe for writing?
Right. While the mainland, after 1949, rolled out simplified characters.
Which, to be fair, they did for a very practical reason.
Absolutely. We have to be balanced here. The simplification campaign was a massive and largely successful effort to dramatically increase literacy across a vast and largely uneducated population. It was a nation-building project.
So when Taiwan makes the cultural claim, it's not really dismissing that achievement.
No, it's more of an ideological claim. They're saying, our path was different. We chose preservation over radical change. We are the true custodians of the deep classical culture. It's a powerful way to distinguish themselves.
And then there's the final piece of their claim, the ideological one, the democratic one.
This became the ultimate trump card later on. By the 1990s, Taiwan had transformed into a real, vibrant, multi-party democracy.
So the argument became, if the true spirit of a civilization is to let its people be free, to let 100 flowers bloom, so to speak,
then the place that actually achieved that Taiwan is the true inheritor of that spirit. And the single-party authoritarian PRC is, in that view, a kind of counterfeit.
And again, we should be clear, that view, calling the PRC a counterfeit, that's a specific political argument coming from democratic advocates in Taiwan and the West. It's a direct challenge to Beijing's narrative.
A very powerful intellectual challenge.
Okay, this is super important. Before we move on, we have to clarify a key piece of jargon for everyone listening. The PRC's One China principle is not the same thing as the U.S.'s One China policy.
A crucial distinction. They sound the same, but they are worlds apart. The PRC's principle is a rigid, absolute demand.
This is how it is, take it or leave it.
Exactly. The U.S. policy, on the other hand, is famously called the art of strategic ambiguity. It's a diplomatic balancing act.
So what does the U.S. policy actually say?
The U.S. formally acknowledges the PRC's position that there is one China and Taiwan is part of China. Acknowledges.
That's the key word. We don't agree with it or endorse it. We just acknowledge that that's their position.
Precisely. The U.S. does not take a position on the ultimate sovereignty of Taiwan. And critically, the U.S. policy insists that any resolution must be peaceful.
It's the ultimate diplomatic tightrope walk. We're telling Beijing, okay, we hear you, we acknowledge your claim, and that lets us have a normal relationship with you.
But at the same time, through a different law, the Taiwan Relations Act, we're telling Taipei, and by the way, we're going to keep selling you advanced defensive weapons so you can protect yourself.
It's a deliberate fiction designed to keep the peace. It allows Taiwan to exist and thrive as a sovereign entity in all but name, while not crossing Beijing's ultimate red line.
It's what has prevented a war for over 4 decades. It's tense, it's awkward, but it has worked.
Okay, so we've got the historical split and the diplomatic war of words. Now for the biggest plot twist of all, the one that happened inside Taiwan itself, the Great Transformation.
This is the story of how the branch store's employees completely rewrote the company mission statement, the shift from an authoritarian government in exile to the democracy we see today.
And it wasn't an overnight thing. You called it a slow-cooked soup.
It really was. For almost 40 years after 1949, the KMT government ruled Taiwan under strict martial law.
The Iron Fist era. What did that mean in practice?
It meant no opposition parties were allowed, no protests. Freedom of speech was heavily censored. They even suppressed the use of local Taiwanese languages in schools.
Why? What was the justification?
The justification was always national security. The official line was, "We're still at war with the communists, and we must remain unified and strong with the eventual goal of retaking the mainland." Domestic policies had to be sacrificed.
But then things started to change. What was the catalyst?
Money, economics. Taiwan became one of the 4 Asian tigers. The economy just exploded.
And that economic success created a large, educated, urban middle class.
Exactly. And that new middle class, who were well off and connected to the world, started to say, hey, wait a minute. We have prosperity, but we don't have freedom. We don't accept this trade-off anymore.
So you start to see domestic pressure building, protests, demands for change.
Huge pressure from inside and also pressure from outside, especially from the U.S. Congress, which was pushing its allies toward democracy during the Cold War.
And it all came to a head in the late 1980s.
It did. The key moment was 1987. The president at the time, Chiang Ching-kuo, was actually the son of Chiang Kai-shek, made the historic decision to lift martial law.
That was the moment the government decided to, in our analogy, uncuff the employees.
It was. It allowed opposition parties, like the Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, to form and compete legally. The floodgates were opened.
And once that happens, you can't really go back.
You can't. And then came the big democratic milestones. In 1996, Taiwan held its first ever direct presidential election. The people, for the first time, got to choose their own national leader.
That's a huge step.
Massive.
Massive.
And then the ultimate test of any new democracy came in the year 2000.
The KMT, the party that had ruled for over 50 years, lost the election.
They lost. The opposition DPP candidate won, and crucially, power was transferred peacefully. No coup, no riots, just an orderly transition. That was the moment Taiwan solidified its status as a full-fledged, mature democracy.
The branch store went from having dad decides everything to holding family meetings where everyone gets a vote, and they voted for a new manager.
And with that democracy came the identity explosion.
The death of the old slogan.
Absolutely. Once people had freedom of speech and the freedom to vote, the KMT could no longer force this identity of "we are the real China" onto the population.
The local native Taiwanese identity, which had been pushed down for decades, just burst into the open.
And the data on this is just staggering. It's not a subtle shift, it's a political earthquake.
Let's look at the numbers. Polling from places like NCCU in Taiwan, which has tracked this for decades, shows that back in 1992,
only about 18%, less than 1 in 5 people, identified as being Taiwanese only.
And now, the most recent polls from 2024 and 2025.
Now it's over 70%.
Yep.
Over 2/3 of the population identifies as purely Taiwanese.
And the number who identify as just Chinese?
It's collapsed. It's somewhere down in the low single digits, maybe 2 to 6%, depending on the poll.
And if you look at the younger generation, the numbers are even more dramatic.
For people born after democratization, so those under 30, it's like 80 or 90%. For them, the PRC is just another country. It's a foreign country. The idea that Taiwan is the real China sounds like something from their grandparents' history books.
Yes.
It has no relevance to their lives.
Why? Why this huge, rapid shift?
Well, first, as we said, democracy just allowed people to finally say what they'd been thinking. The government also started promoting local Taiwanese history and culture, things the KMT had suppressed.
Reversing that mainland-centric view of the world.
Exactly. But maybe the biggest driver of Taiwanese identity has been the PRC itself.
Beijing has been the best recruiter for the Taiwanese identity movement.
Without a doubt. Every time they fly fighter jets near the island, every time they threaten an invasion, every time they bully a country into cutting ties with Taipei, it just pushes the Taiwanese people further away.
It makes them say, see, that is not us. We do not want to be part of that political system.
It creates this fascinating distinction. Many Taiwanese people might still love Chinese food, or watch Chinese historical dramas, or appreciate the shared cultural heritage.
Sure, culture is one thing.
But they absolutely reject the political system. So the consensus on the island has fundamentally and probably irreversibly changed.
The old slogan, Taiwan is the true China, is dead.
It's a museum piece. The mainstream view today is, we are Taiwan. We are a sovereign, independent country that is distinct from the PRC. Full stop.
And they don't want to change that.
The polling is overwhelming. They want to maintain the current status quo of de facto independence. A tiny, shrinking minority wants unification. This identity shift is the single most important factor in this conflict today.
Which brings us to, right now, the current status. Let's talk about Taiwan today.
The super cool, successful branch store.
I mean, it really is. It's a thriving democracy of 23 million people, and it is an economic giant.
It's not just a successful local economy. It is a critical, systemic part of the global economy.
Let's put some meat on that bone. When we say it's critical, what do we mean?
We mean semiconductors, chips, the most advanced ones. Taiwan, and one company in particular, produces over half of the world's supply. Some estimates put their share of the most high-end chips at over 90%.
So if you're listening to this on a high-end smartphone, or if your car has modern electronics, or if you're using a cloud service,
you are relying on components made in Taiwan. Its security is directly linked to the functioning of the entire global tech economy.
And yet, all this success exists under a constant dark cloud.
Constant tension. The PRC has never renounced the use of force. They consistently say they will take over the branch by military means if necessary.
So what is Taiwan's official stance now, given that reality?
The current leadership has a very clear and careful position. We are already an independent country called the Republic of China, Taiwan. We have our own president, military, and territory. Therefore, we do not need to declare independence.
It's the branch manager saying, look, I'm already running my own successful store. It's open for business. Why would I provoke the main office into trying to smash my windows by putting up a grand reopening sign?
That's a perfect summary. And the public overwhelmingly supports that pragmatic stance.
This forces the rest of the world into that awkward middle ground we talked about.
The diplomatic tightrope. Most countries officially recognize Beijing's one China position.
But they all maintain robust, unofficial relationships with Taiwan for trade, for culture, and for security. It's a system that works precisely because everyone pretends it's something it isn't.
And that's where the big uncle neighbor, the U.S., plays a special role.
Right. Under the 1979 Taiwan Relations Act, the U.S. is legally committed to providing Taiwan with the weapons it needs to defend itself.
We sell them the locks for the door.
But, and this is the strategic ambiguity part, we are deliberately vague about whether we would send our own soldiers to help if a fight actually broke out.
That ambiguity is designed to keep both sides guessing, to deter Beijing from attacking, and to deter Taipei from a formal declaration of independence that would trigger a war.
Okay, that brings us to the very latest update, the newest chapter in this story, the 2025 warranty upgrade.
I like that. Yes, the Taiwan Assurance Implementation Act.
This was signed into law on December 2, 2025. And what's really striking about this law is not just what it does, but how it got passed.
It had massive, near-unanimous bipartisan support in Congress. This wasn't a partisan issue. This signals a deep institutional commitment in Washington to supporting Taiwan that goes beyond any single president or party.
So, using our analogy, if the original promise was just to install a lock on the branch store?
This new law is like saying, and we are now legally required to send an inspector every 5 years to check if that lock is rusty. And if it is, we have to upgrade it to the latest model no matter who's in charge.
So what's the core change? What does it actually do?
Okay, so a few years ago, in 2020, Congress passed the first Taiwan Assurance Act. It required the State Department to do a one-time review of all the old, stuffy, restrictive internal guidelines that governed how U.S. officials could interact with their Taiwanese counterparts.
These were the rules that treated Taiwan like an invisible person, right? Like where officials could meet, what flags could be shown.
Exactly. All that diplomatic minutia. The new 2025 Implementation Act takes that one-time review and makes it permanent and recurring. It mandates that the State Department must conduct this review and update the guidelines at least once every 5 years.
And they have to report back to Congress about it.
Within 90 days. So it's not a huge policy earthquake, but it's a huge structural change. It's a long-term warranty contract.
It institutionalizes the process of modernizing the relationship. It prevents the U.S. from backsliding into treating Taiwan like a diplomatic pariah.
The Washington Post had a great take on this, saying it normalizes the relationship and treats Taiwan less like a problem and more like what it is, a key democratic and economic partner.
It adds predictability.
It adds predictability, which is incredibly valuable for Taipei.
So what's the impact of this upgrade on the ground?
For Taiwan, the benefits are real. It stabilizes the relationship. It makes it easier to arrange high-level visits. It supports technology cooperation on things like chips, which is a huge U.S. security concern now.
And it provides political backup for Taiwan's own defense spending.
It does. When Taiwan's government goes to its people and says, we need to spend billions on defense, having this kind of clear legislated support from the U.S. makes that a much easier case to make. It's a signal of reliability.
Now, you can probably guess the reaction from the main office.
Oh, the PRC reaction was swift and entirely predictable.
Gross interference in our internal affairs.
You got it. They accuse the U.S. of undermining peace and stability. They see it as the nosy neighbor installing a new high-tech security fence and surveillance cameras for the branch store right on what they consider to be their property line.
So we can expect more angry words, probably more military drills around the island?
For sure. But the fact that this U.S. support is now so clearly bipartisan and written into law actually limits Beijing's options. They know they can't just wait for a new president and hope the policy changes. The U.S. position is now much more firmly anchored.
Okay, so let's wrap this all up. Let's bring it home.
We've gone from the 19th century vegetable garden to the 21st century semiconductor powerhouse.
We've traced the family company split, the battle for the brand name, the explosion of a new identity, and the international tightrope walk.
And I think it proves that this one China debate is just so much more than a simple border dispute.
It's not a math problem. It's this deep, messy, historical question about who gets to represent a civilization and, more importantly, who gets to decide the future for 23 million people who have built a democracy against all odds.
We hope this quick recap update, this whole HQ versus branch store story, has helped clear up some of the fog around one of the world's most explosive issues.
And as we close, based on everything we've laid out today, the decades of separate rule, the democratic transformation, the polling that shows over 70% of the population has a distinct identity, it leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to mull over.
Here it is. If the overwhelming majority of people in a functioning sovereign democracy consistently and peacefully express their desire for a separate identity, rejecting a historical claim from a neighboring authoritarian power.
At what point does the rest of the world's diplomatic framework need to catch up with that democratic reality on the ground?
It's a question the people of Taiwan answer with every election they hold. And it's a question the rest of the world is being forced, slowly but surely, to confront.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep look into a really complex topic.
And hey, if you enjoyed this, please be sure to subscribe to the Sip&Talk podcast wherever you're listening.
And give a shout out to our old friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickytolife. We've started doing some joint content with him, some recap reviews of our deep dives, so be sure to check that out as well.
We will see you next time.
See you next time.